Let's talk about Canada, our famously polite, maple syrup-loving neighbor to the north, a country that just pulled off a move nobody saw coming and left the world doing a double take. Just last month, Prime Minister Mark Carney made headlines by announcing that Canada would be dropping a massive chunk of its retaliatory tariffs against the U.S., 30 billion Canadian dollars worth, to be exact. That's not just pocket change, it's a bold economic maneuver that sent shockwaves through both countries' business communities. This wasn't some minor policy tweak buried in the back pages. It was a headline-grabbing, economy-shifting gamble that had analysts scrambling to make sense of what it all meant for North American trade. For months, Trump's White House had been slapping tariffs on just about everyone, and Canada, refusing to back down, had hit right back with tariffs of its own. It was a classic trade war standoff, two neighbors glaring at each other over a very expensive, invisible fence, each waiting for the other to blink first. Then, almost out of nowhere, Canada lowered its fists and signaled a willingness to talk, surprising even seasoned diplomats. The timing? Impeccable. This move came right before the crucial U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA review, and after months of mounting economic pain on both sides of the border. Businesses were hurting, exporters were squeezed, and the standoff was becoming more and more unsustainable with every passing week. So why did Carney make this move? Was it a sign of surrender, a clever strategy, or maybe something else entirely? The answer isn't as simple as it seems. The White House was quick to call it a victory, eager to claim credit, but the reality behind the headlines is far more complex and layered. This move exposes the strange, contradictory world of modern trade, where old deals clash with new politics and every decision is a high-stakes calculation. In the end, it's a story about leverage, loopholes, and a whole lot of lumber, reminding us that in global trade, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. What does a $21.7 billion tariff cut look like? It sounds massive, but the reality is a bit more nuanced than you might expect. Not quite the floodgates opening. There's no sudden tidal wave of goods pouring across the border and no overnight transformation of the marketplace. The key is that Canada's cut only applies to American goods that are USMCA compliant. That means only products meeting strict rules of origin and content requirements get the benefit. Canada mirrored a loophole in U.S. tariffs. If it's covered by the deal, it's spared. This approach ensures that only trusted, vetted goods move freely. Over 85% of trade between the two countries already qualifies as USMCA compliant, including most energy exports, auto parts, and major agricultural products. For these industries, the new rules simply reinforce the status quo. So, for most goods, Trump's big tariff threat was mostly a phantom menace. The impact is far less dramatic than headlines suggest. Canada's move creates a USMCA-shaped free trade zone in the middle of a trade war, carving out a protected corridor for compliant goods. American businesses producing compliant goods get a huge break. Their products are suddenly competitive again and they can plan with more certainty. The White House claimed victory, but it's not total. The deal is a win for some, but not a sweeping triumph for all. Canada is relieving pressure on its own consumers and businesses, while keeping tariffs on industries the U.S. continues to target. It's a balancing act, protecting domestic interests while avoiding escalation. It's not surrender, it's a strategic recalibration. Canada is choosing its battles, using the rules to its advantage. Canada is saying, we'll play by the rules of your deal, but we won't be bullied outside those lines. It's a message of resilience and pragmatism. It's a subtle, bureaucratic, and very Canadian way of fighting back. Instead of confrontation, it's careful maneuvering. The trade war just got a lot more complicated, and the next moves will be anything but simple. To really appreciate the irony here, let's take a closer look at the USMCA, Trump's signature trade deal, which he touted as a historic win for American workers and businesses. Trump replaced NAFTA with the USMCA, claiming it was a huge improvement and a victory for the United States. But now, that very agreement is coming back to haunt him, because it actually shields Canada and Mexico from the tariffs he wants to impose. Thanks to USMCA's strict rules of origin and its carefully negotiated terms, over 85% of goods traded within North America move across borders tariff-free, supporting millions of jobs and keeping supply chains running smoothly. Ironically, Trump's own deal now blocks his administration from launching a full-scale trade war against its neighbors, unless they're willing to tear up the very agreement he once celebrated as a triumph. Facing this unexpected obstacle, the White House is now hinting at renegotiating the deal, seeing USMCA as a roadblock to their protectionist agenda and a barrier to imposing new tariffs. For Canada and Mexico, USMCA is more than just a trade pact, it's a lifeline. Over 84% of Mexican trade and the vast majority of Canadian exports to the US are protected under its rules, providing stability in uncertain times. Mark Carney's move to base tariffs on USMCA compliance is a masterstroke. It helps de-escalate conflict, softens the economic blow at home, and cleverly uses Trump's own rules as a shield against his aggressive tactics. In effect, Carney is using the master's tools to block the master's attacks, turning Trump's own strategy against him in a high-stakes game of political chess. Sometimes the most effective defense isn't just a new strategy, it's using the other side's own playbook and beating them at their own game. The USMCA shields most trade, but some industries are still in the crosshairs. Steel, aluminum, autos and lumber remain battered by US tariffs, and Canada's counter-tariffs stay in place. For these sectors, the pain is real. Steel and aluminum face 50% US tariffs, threatening jobs and entire communities. Ontario lost 38,000 manufacturing jobs in 3 months. These aren't just numbers, they're livelihoods. The auto sector faces 25% tariffs, with only limited carve-outs. The softwood lumber dispute is a decades-old wound, and new tariffs have hit producers hard. Carney's government announced aid for lumber, admitting some sectors need direct support. For these industries, there's no clever loophole, just damage control. The broader economy may benefit, but these workers are still fighting for survival. Their fate depends on resolving these bitter, entrenched disputes. Canada's move sparked a political firestorm. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre called it capitulation, Canada giving in to US pressure. Carney argues it's strategic. Aligning tariffs with USMCA preserves access to the US market and protects most of the economy. He's not surrendering, he's playing by the rules to shield Canadian interests. The White House's chest-thumping aside, US diplomats were likely relieved. The move de-escalates tensions and helps businesses. For steelworkers, it may feel like surrender. For business owners, it's genius. The truth is, somewhere in the messy middle, a calculated risk in a tough situation. Its success or failure will be debated for months. In politics, framing is everything. This isn't the end of the trade war, just a pause on the main front. Trump's tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum and autos remain, and Canada's counter-tariffs hold firm. The USMCA creates a demilitarized zone for most goods, but heavy industry is still a battlefield. Canada's selective approach signals, we'll be reasonable where rules apply, but we'll fight for our key sectors. The Trump administration's trade philosophy is torn, regional integration versus aggressive protectionism. You can't champion free trade and attack your neighbor's industries at the same time. The future is uncertain. These disputes could be resolved in the USMCA review, or fester for years. Business leaders warn that losing USMCA would be catastrophic. Negotiators face immense pressure to find a solution. Compromise will be tough, but the stakes couldn't be higher. The next chapter is still unwritten. Where does this leave U.S.-Canada relations? Canada's $21 billion move is a ceasefire, not a peace treaty. By using the USMCA as both shield and sword, Carney de-escalated the conflict and put the ball in Washington's court. Trump's team wants to renegotiate the deal, seeing its loopholes as bugs, not features. The upcoming USMCA review will be the main event for North American trade. Canada's strategy: defend the USMCA, fight targeted battles and hope the deal's benefits outweigh protectionist urges. Business leaders warn of chaos if the deal collapses. This episode shows smaller nations can still wield leverage. Canada's approach, using agreements, policy, and some pain, has carved out relative strength. The immediate future will be tense, but for now, Canada has turned Trump's own deal into its best defense. In trade wars, sometimes the best offense is a good, legally binding defense.